The morning shift on Station Kepler 7 began like any other day in the past 3 years. Ambassador Zethkalar stretched his scaled arms and reviewed the daily reports from his office overlooking the main docking bay. The Galactic Council had assigned him to monitor trade flows in this sector, a job he considered beneath his status but necessary for advancement. He watched human cargo ships come and go with the same boredom he felt watching paint dry on his homeworld. Captain Jake Morrison guided his vessel Aurora's Edge through the docking procedures with practiced ease. The station controllers barely glanced at his manifest, listing agricultural exports and mining equipment bound for the outer colonies. They had no reason to suspect that hidden beneath the false cargo bay floors were 12,000 sleeping humans in emergency transport pods. This was his 47th run in 6 months, and each time the routine grew smoother. Dr. Lisa Campbell uploaded her final research reports to the Council database from her laboratory on New Geneva. Her colleagues in other species praised her work on theoretical quantum mechanics and dimensional physics, never suspecting that her theories had been proven and implemented years ago. The quantum tunnel networks she described as mathematical possibilities were already moving entire human populations to places the Council could never imagine existed. The evacuation had begun 18 months earlier when humanity's leadership made a decision that would change everything. President Alex Turner had called together the finest minds from every human colony and presented them with a simple question. Did they want to remain as junior partners in a galaxy that would never see them as equals, or did they want to build something better somewhere else? The vote was unanimous. Commander Ryan Brooks coordinated the withdrawal from his command center deep beneath New Geneva's capital city. Every day brought new challenges as millions of humans needed to disappear without anyone noticing. Families were separated across multiple ships to avoid suspicious passenger manifests. Critical personnel stayed behind to maintain the illusion that human civilization continued as normal. The volunteers who remained knew they might never see their relocated families again. The genius of the plan lay in its simplicity. Human merchant vessels had always carried diverse cargo between colonies, so gradually shifting to carry people instead of goods drew no attention. Mining operations naturally had fluctuating outputs, so reduced shipments seemed normal. Research stations operated on skeleton crews all the time due to budget constraints. So minimal staffing raised no flags. General Linda Foster managed the military aspects of the evacuation from her flagship orbiting beyond the system's edge. Human defense fleets had always operated independently, so gradually moving ships to new positions caused no concern. The few Council observers assigned to human space saw only routine patrols and training exercises. They never realized they were watching the largest military redeployment in galactic history. Engineer Matt Collins worked 18-hour days modifying human transport ships to carry far more people than their official capacity ratings suggested. Hidden compartments, expanded life support systems, and emergency hibernation pods turned cargo haulers into massive evacuation vessels. The modifications were so skillfully done that even detailed inspections by Council customs officers revealed nothing unusual. Navigator Pete Johnson plotted courses that would take human ships far beyond Council space before using the quantum tunnel networks. Each vessel followed seemingly normal trade routes until they reached the galactic rim, where they would vanish into dimensional folds that Council sensors could not detect. The ships would emerge in star systems that existed in parallel space, invisible to anyone who did not know the exact dimensional coordinates. Senator Greg Hamilton continued attending Council sessions and voting on trade legislation as if nothing had changed. His presence in the Council chambers provided crucial cover for the evacuation, giving the appearance that human leadership remained engaged in galactic politics. He answered questions about reduced human trade volumes by citing economic restructuring and infrastructure improvements that sounded perfectly reasonable to Council economist. Dr. Rachel Morgan maintained her position as head of human scientific cooperation, regularly submitting reports and attending conferences with researchers from other species. Her continued presence convinced Council scientists that human research programs remained active and productive. She shared carefully selected data that suggested human technology development was proceeding at normal rates, never hinting at the revolutionary breakthroughs that had made the evacuation possible. The quantum tunnel technology had been humanity's greatest secret for over a decade. While Council species fought over limited resources and established territories, humans had learned to create new space itself. The dimensional engineering that made this possible required mathematical concepts that most Council species considered impossible. Human scientists had developed these theories through unprecedented cooperation between colonies, sharing research freely instead of guarding it jealously like other species. Captain Nicole Hayes commanded the diplomatic security forces that protected the remaining human officials in Council space. Her teams were experts at misdirection, creating false communications traffic and maintaining the appearance of normal human government operations. Every day they sent thousands of routine messages between human colonies, never revealing that most of those colonies were now empty shells maintained by automated systems. The few humans who remained in Council space were volunteers who understood the magnitude of their sacrifice. They maintained their normal routines, attended social functions, and conducted business as usual. Their children had been evacuated with the first waves, ensuring that no young humans would be left behind when the truth was eventually discovered. These volunteers knew they were buying time for their species to establish a new civilization beyond Council reach. Dr. Helen Price continued her work at the Galactic Science Institute, collaborating with researchers from a dozen species on projects that would never be completed. Her presence maintained the illusion that human scientific cooperation remained strong. She answered questions about delayed research deliveries by citing equipment failures and supply chain disruptions that sounded perfectly normal in the context of galactic commerce. Commander Kyle Murphy operated monitoring stations at the galaxy's edge, tracking Council fleet movements and ensuring that no unexpected patrols would discover human evacuation routes. His reports to Council command centers described routine deep space phenomena and commercial traffic, never mentioning the massive human fleet movements occurring just beyond sensor range. The evacuation proceeded with clockwork precision because every human involved understood what was at stake. They were not fleeing in panic or desperation. They were executing a carefully planned withdrawal from a galaxy that had never offered them true partnership. The Council species saw humans as useful subordinates who should be grateful for the privilege of serving their betters. Humanity had decided they deserved something better than perpetual second-class status. As Jake Morrison completed his final docking procedure and prepared for his last journey to the new human territories, he reflected on what they were leaving behind. The Council species would eventually discover what had happened, but by then it would be far too late to stop it. Humanity was moving to a place where they could build the civilization they had always dreamed of, free from the limitations imposed by species who could never see them as equals. Counselor Vex Thara stared at her data screen with growing confusion. The quarterly trade reports showed something that made no sense. Human cargo shipments had dropped from millions of tons per month to absolutely nothing in the span of 2 weeks. She checked the data 3 times, certain there must be an error in the computer systems. No civilization simply stopped all trade overnight without explanation. The hegemony counselor called her aide and requested detailed shipping manifests for the past 6 months. When the reports arrived, she discovered something even more disturbing. Human trade volumes had been steadily declining for months, but so gradually that no one had noticed the pattern. It was as if someone had carefully planned to reduce attention while slowly shutting down all commercial activity. Senator Greg Hamilton sat in his usual chair during the morning Council session, reviewing agricultural policies with the same calm attention he had shown for 3 years. When Vexthera approached him during the lunch break, he listened to her concerns with polite interest. He explained that human colonies were undergoing major infrastructure upgrades that temporarily disrupted shipping schedules. The explanation sounded reasonable, and Hamilton provided detailed technical specifications that satisfied most questions. Admiral Corthton of the Federation Navy had been tracking unusual deep space communications for several weeks. Human colonies typically maintained constant contact with each other and with Council space. But recently the messages have become sparse and oddly formal. When he tried to establish direct contact with New Geneva's planetary government, he received automated responses claiming temporary communication difficulties due to solar storm interference. Dr. Rachel Morgan continued attending her weekly research meetings at the Galactic Science Institute, but her colleagues began noticing subtle changes in her behavior. She seemed distracted during discussions and often gave vague answers about ongoing human research projects. When pressed for details about delayed experimental results, she cited equipment failures and personnel shortages that required postponing several major studies. The first real alarm came when Counselor Zeth Kalar attempted to schedule a routine inspection of human mining operations in the Tau Ceti system. The mining consortium's automated systems acknowledged his request and promised to arrange transportation, but weeks passed without any follow-up communication. When he contacted the local human administrator directly, he received a polite message explaining that all civilian transportation had been suspended due to maintenance on the orbital elevator system. Captain Jake Morrison had returned to Council Space one final time, ostensibly to deliver a shipment of rare minerals to the Centauri trading station. His cargo manifest listed standard mining equipment and geological samples, but station security noticed that his crew seemed unusually tense during the routine customs inspection. The inspection revealed nothing suspicious but the security. Chief noted that Morrison's ship departed immediately after unloading, without taking on any return cargo as human merchants typically did. Vexthara decided to investigate further by contacting human colonies directly rather than going through official channels. She used her personal communication array to send messages to a dozen different human settlements, requesting updates on local economic conditions. The responses she received were all perfectly polite and professionally written, but they contained an odd similarity in phrasing that suggested they might have been composed by the same person or computer system. The breakthrough came when Admiral Corthton ordered a detailed analysis of communication patterns from human space. His technical specialists discovered that while human colonies continued sending routine status reports, the quantum signatures of the transmissions indicated they were all originating from automated relay stations rather than actual population centers. Someone was maintaining the appearance of normal human activity while the actual colonies remained silent. Senator Hamilton found himself facing increasingly pointed questions during council sessions. Fellow council members wanted to know why human representatives had stopped submitting new proposals for expansion projects. They questioned the sudden absence of human scientists from major research conferences. Hamilton provided reasonable explanations for each concern, but his responses began to sound rehearsed and overly prepared. Dr. Helen Price made her last appearance at the Galactic Science Institute 3 weeks after the automated transmissions were discovered. She submitted final reports on several ongoing projects and announced that she would be taking extended leave to address family matters on New Geneva. Her colleagues wished her well and expected her to return within a few months. They had no idea they would never see her again. The Council's growing suspicions reached a critical point when Councillor Thainmer of the Alliance attempted to arrange an emergency diplomatic meeting with human leadership. The request was acknowledged through normal channels, but every attempt to schedule the meeting resulted in delays and postponements. Human officials cited scheduling conflicts, transportation problems, and communication difficulties that seemed designed to avoid any direct contact. Admiral Corthton made the decision that would reveal the truth. He dispatched a reconnaissance fleet to conduct what he described as a routine patrol of the human sectors. The fleet consisted of ships from 3 different council species, making it impossible for humans to claim the patrol was politically motivated. The ships were equipped with the most advanced sensors available to council technology, capable of detecting life signs and energy signatures from enormous distances. Commander Kyle Murphy watched the approaching council fleet from his monitoring station at the galaxy's edge. He had been expecting this moment for months, and his instructions were clear. He was to observe and report, but take no action that might reveal human capabilities or intentions. The final phase of the deception was about to begin, and everything depended on maintaining the illusion until the very end. The Council fleet arrived at New Geneva to find a planet that defied all their expectations. The cities were intact and clearly maintained, with power grids operating normally and transportation systems functioning perfectly. Orbital installations continued their automated operations, processing cargo and managing traffic with mechanical precision. But there were no people anywhere. Not in the cities, not in the spaceports, not in the research facilities or government buildings. Captain Nicole Hayes had remained behind with a small team of volunteers to manage this final revelation. When the Council fleet demanded explanations, she calmly informed them that humanity had made a collective decision to relocate beyond Council space. The evacuation had been completed months earlier, and what they were seeing was simply the automated systems that maintained human installations until Council forces arrived to investigate. The Council officers who explored the empty human cities found something that shook them more than any military defeat could have. The cities had been abandoned with careful precision, as if their inhabitants had simply decided to leave and had done so with methodical planning. Personal belongings remained in homes, but all the valuable technology and research data had been systematically removed. It was clear that this had not been a hasty evacuation driven by fear, but a calculated withdrawal executed with military precision. Admiral Corthton stood in the empty council chambers on New Geneva and tried to comprehend what he was seeing. The humans had not fled from superior force or been driven out by conquest. They had simply chosen to leave, and they had done so with capabilities that made Council technology seem primitive by comparison. The reconnaissance that was supposed to solve the mystery of human silence had instead revealed a truth that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Emergency sessions were called across all Council territories as news of humanity's disappearance spread through diplomatic channels. The Grand Assembly Hall on Nexus Prime had never seen such urgent activity as representatives from every major species demanded answers about how an entire civilization could vanish without detection. Councillor Vextara presented her findings to a gathering that grew more agitated with each piece of evidence she revealed. Dr. Marcus Webb stood before the assembled Council scientists as the last remaining human researcher in their midst. His colleagues peppered him with questions about human technology and capabilities that he answered with careful precision. He explained that humanity had been working on advanced propulsion systems for decades, but he claimed ignorance about the specific methods used for the evacuation. His responses were truthful but incomplete, revealing just enough to satisfy immediate curiosity while concealing the full scope of human achievements. The Zephyrian Empire's top research team descended upon the abandoned human laboratories like scavengers picking through ruins. What they found in the empty research facilities challenged everything they thought they knew about technological development. Energy conversion systems that operated at efficiency levels their own scientists considered impossible. Materials that could restructure themselves at the molecular level in response to external conditions. Computing networks that seemed to process information faster than the speed of light itself. Engineer Matt Collins had volunteered to remain behind specifically to handle technical questions from Council investigators. He guided teams of alien scientists through human research facilities, explaining the basic principles behind various technologies, while carefully avoiding details that would allow them to replicate the most advanced systems. When asked about the quantum tunnel networks, he described them as experimental transportation devices that had never been successfully tested on a large scale. Admiral Corthton established a command center on New Geneva to coordinate the massive investigation effort. Ships from every Council fleet arrived daily, bringing teams of specialists to examine every aspect of human civilization. Archaeologists studied the empty cities for clues about human culture and motivations. Military analysts examined defense installations to understand human strategic thinking. Computer experts tried to crack the security systems, Protecting human databases. The investigation revealed disturbing patterns that suggested humanity had been planning their departure for years. Dr. Rachel Morgan, now serving as the primary liaison between humans and the Council, explained that her people had grown frustrated with their status as junior partners in galactic civilization. She described how human proposals for technological cooperation had been consistently rejected or altered to benefit other species more than humanity itself. Captain Nicole Hayes provided Council investigators with access to human government archives that painted a picture of systematic discrimination disguised as protective oversight. Trade agreements that locked humans into providing raw materials while preventing them from developing advanced manufacturing. Research partnerships that required humans to share their discoveries while giving them limited access to alien technologies. Immigration policies that restricted human settlement while allowing other species to establish colonies in human space. The most shocking discovery came when Zephyrian scientists managed to activate one of the abandoned quantum research laboratories. The equipment they found inside operated on principles that made their most advanced physics theories seem primitive. Dr. Helen Price, who had remained to assist with the investigation, explained that human scientists had been studying dimensional mechanics for over 50 years, developing mathematical models that allowed them to manipulate space itself. Commander Ryan Brooks revealed to Council military leaders that humanity had not simply developed better ships or weapons. They had learned to create entirely new spaces where civilizations could exist. The quantum tunnel networks were not just transportation devices but gateways to pocket dimensions that could house entire star systems. Humanity had not fled to distant galaxies but had moved to spaces that existed parallel to normal reality. The implications of this revelation sent shockwaves through every Council species. If humans could create new dimensional spaces, they potentially had access to unlimited resources and territory. They could establish civilizations that were completely invisible to conventional detection methods. Most disturbing of all, they could potentially access any location in normal space without using traditional faster-than-light travel methods. Navigator Pete Johnson worked with Council exploration teams to trace the routes human ships had taken during the evacuation. His analysis revealed that human vessels had followed seemingly random paths that gradually converged at specific points along the galactic rim. These convergence points showed traces of massive energy discharges consistent with dimensional gateway activation. But the gateways themselves had been completely dismantled after use. The Council demanded access to the mathematical principles behind dimensional engineering. But the remaining humans explained that such knowledge required decades of study to understand safely. Dr. Marcus Webb demonstrated basic dimensional calculations that caused several alien physicists to suffer nervous breakdowns when they attempted to comprehend the implications. The mathematics involved concepts that challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality itself. General Linda Foster appeared via recorded message to address the Council's growing demands for human technology. She explained that humanity had offered to share their discoveries with other species many times over the years, but had been rebuffed by Council members who considered human science inferior to their own established theories. The offer had remained open until the moment humanity decided to leave, but no Council species had ever shown genuine interest in cooperation rather than domination. The search for humanity's new location became the Council's primary obsession. Fleets were dispatched to every unexplored region of the galaxy, searching for any trace of human activity. Scientists worked around the clock to develop detection methods that might reveal dimensional anomalies. Diplomatic missions were sent to distant civilizations, seeking any information about human contact or technology transfers. Engineer Matt Collins watched the frantic search efforts with quiet amusement. He knew that Council species were looking in all the wrong places using completely inadequate methods. Humanity's new civilization existed in dimensions that required specific quantum frequencies to access, frequencies that could only be generated using mathematical principles the Council barely understood existed. Even if they found the right location, they would never be able to reach it without understanding dimensional mechanics. The investigation continued for months as more council ships arrived to assist in the search. Entire research institutions were established on abandoned human worlds, dedicated to reverse engineering human technology and understanding the principles behind dimensional travel. The effort represented the largest scientific collaboration in council history, but it was driven by desperation rather than genuine scientific curiosity. Dr. Rachel Morgan delivered humanity's final official statement to the Council Assembly after 6 months of investigation. She explained that her people had not vanished out of hatred or fear, but out of disappointment. Humanity had hoped to find among the stars civilizations that would welcome true partnership and mutual growth. Instead, they had discovered species trapped in cycles of competition and dominance that prevented genuine cooperation. The decision to leave had been made not in anger, but in sadness over what galactic civilization could have become but never would be under Council leadership. Admiral Thulrun commanded the largest deep space exploration fleet in galactic history as hundreds of ships spread across the rim territories, searching for any trace of humanity's new civilization. The combined fleet represented every major council species working together for the first time in centuries, united by their desperate need to locate the humans, who had vanished with technology that could revolutionize galactic civilization. Each ship carried the most advanced sensors available to council science, scanning every star system for energy signatures that might indicate human presence. Navigator Pete Johnson guided council exploration vessels through the outer rim territories, with careful precision, following flight paths that human evacuation ships had taken months earlier. His knowledge of human evacuation routes made him invaluable to the search effort, but he was also following instructions to lead council forces to specific locations that would reveal just enough truth to satisfy their curiosity, while protecting humanity's actual destination. Each system they visited showed clear signs of recent human activity that had been deliberately left behind. The first major discovery came in the Kepler 442 system, where Council scouts found massive orbital construction platforms that had been abandoned while still partially complete. The engineering involved in building the platforms exceeded anything in Council space. With materials and construction techniques that seemed impossibly advanced, Dr. Marcus Webb examined the installations alongside alien scientists and explained that humans had been experimenting with large-scale space construction using automated systems that could work for years without supervision. Captain Jake Morrison appeared in a recorded message found in the abandoned construction site, explaining that humanity had established multiple preparation areas throughout the rim territories while developing their dimensional travel capabilities. The message revealed that humans had been testing their evacuation procedures for over 2 years, building temporary installations that would be abandoned once the real departure began. The scale of the preparation suggested a level of long-term planning that impressed even Council military strategist. Engineer Matt Collins led Council technical teams through the abandoned facilities, pointing out innovations in power generation and materials science that human engineers had developed during their secret preparation phase. The energy systems operated on principles that Council physicists were still trying to understand, converting matter directly into usable power with efficiency levels approaching theoretical maximums. The construction materials could repair themselves when damaged and adapt their properties based on environmental conditions. The second major find occurred in the Volf 359 system, where our exploration teams discovered an entire planet that had been partially terraformed using techniques unknown to Council science. The atmosphere had been modified to support human life in just a few years rather than the centuries typically required for terraforming projects. Plant life had been introduced that grew at impossible rates while producing perfect atmospheric balance. Weather patterns had been established that seemed to operate according to mathematical principles rather than natural processes. Dr. Helen Price analyzed the terraforming data with growing amazement at what human science had accomplished. The biological systems introduced to the planet worked together with mechanical precision, creating a stable ecosystem in a fraction of the time normally required. Soil composition had been altered at the molecular level to support specific crop types that could feed millions of people with minimal agricultural infrastructure. Water cycles had been engineered to distribute moisture with perfect efficiency across all climate zones. Commander Kyle Murphy monitored Council search efforts from his position at the galaxy's edge, reporting on their progress to human leadership in their new dimensional space. His observations revealed that Council forces were following exactly the trail that humanity had intended them to follow, discovering impressive but ultimately incomplete examples of human capabilities. The real achievements remained hidden in dimensional space where Council technology could never detect them. The breakthrough that changed everything came when Council scientists detected massive gravitational anomalies in what appeared to be completely empty space near the galactic core. The gravitational signatures suggested the presence of entire star systems that somehow existed without being visible to conventional sensors. Dr. Rachel Morgan reluctantly confirmed that the anomalies were related to human dimensional engineering, but she explained that detecting the signatures was far different from understanding how to access the spaces they indicated. Admiral Corthton deployed the most advanced physics research ships in the Council fleet to study the gravitational anomalies. What they discovered challenged every assumption about the nature of space and reality itself. The measurements indicated that massive objects existed in the same location as the empty space they were observing, but in dimensions that were shifted just enough to make them invisible and intangible to normal matter. The implications suggested that humanity had learned to create parallel versions of space itself. The Council's top physicists worked frantically to develop detection methods that might reveal more details about the dimensional spaces humanity had created. Their instruments detected energy flows that seemed to violate fundamental laws of physics, with power generation on scales that dwarfed the output of entire star systems. Communication signals passed through the area at speeds that exceeded the theoretical limits of information transfer. Most disturbing of all, the signals seemed to be coming from multiple locations simultaneously, suggesting a level of dimensional engineering that created spaces larger than the universe itself. Navigator Pete Johnson finally revealed the truth that Council leaders had been dreading. Humanity had not simply found a new place to live or develop better transportation technology. They had learned to create entirely new realities where the laws of physics could be modified to support whatever kind of civilization they chose to build. The dimensional spaces contained not just hiding places but entire universes designed specifically for human habitation and growth. Captain Nicole Hayes delivered humanity's response to the Council's search efforts through a transmission that originated from the gravitational anomaly site. Her message explained that humanity appreciated the Council's interest in renewing contact, but that any future relationship would need to be based on genuine equality rather than the paternalistic attitudes that had driven humanity to leave in the first place. The transmission included detailed sensor readings that proved human technology could monitor Council activities throughout normal space without being detected. General Linda Foster appeared in a follow-up transmission that demonstrated humanity's defensive capabilities without making any threatening gestures. Human ships materialized briefly in normal space around the Council fleet, their hulls reflecting sensor beams in ways that proved they existed partially in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The ships vanished before Council weapons could lock onto them, leaving behind energy signatures that suggested they had never been there at all. The final revelation came when President Alex Turner addressed the Council fleet directly from what appeared to be a command ship that existed in both normal space and the dimensional fold simultaneously. His vessel was visible to Council sensors but completely intangible to their weapons and tractor beams, demonstrating a level of technological mastery that made any thought of force contact utterly futile. The message was clear: humanity had moved beyond the reach of conventional military power and would engage with Council civilization only on their own terms. President Alex Turner stood on the bridge of his flagship as it materialized partially in normal space near the Council fleet, his vessel existing simultaneously in multiple dimensions through technology that made Council science seem like primitive tools. The ship appeared solid to their sensors but remained completely untouchable by any weapons or instruments they possessed, demonstrating humanity's complete mastery over the forces that governed reality itself. Turner had agreed to this final meeting not out of obligation but out of courtesy to species that had once been neighbors. The council representatives who gathered to hear Turner's message included the most powerful leaders from every major civilization in the galaxy. Admiral Thulren commanded the military forces that had spent months searching for humanity without success. Councillor Vexthara represented the political establishment that had treated humans as useful subordinates for decades. Dr. Ziffen led the scientific community that had dismissed human research as inferior theoretical work. All of them now faced the reality that they had catastrophically underestimated the species they had considered their juniors. Turner's opening words carried no anger or accusation, only a calm sadness that somehow made them more devastating than any military threat could have been. He explained that humanity had not left Council space out of fear or hatred, but out of profound disappointment in what galactic civilization had become. The species that had first welcomed humans to the stars had promised partnership and cooperation, but had delivered only condescension and systematic exclusion from meaningful participation in galactic affairs. The human president revealed the true scope of what the Council had lost through their short-sighted policies and assumptions about human capabilities. The dimensional engineering technology that had enabled humanity's departure was only one achievement among many that humans had developed while pretending to be grateful junior partners. Energy systems that could power entire civilizations without consuming any natural resources. Medical technologies that could extend healthy lifespans indefinitely while eliminating most diseases. Agricultural methods that could turn barren worlds into garden paradises within years rather than centuries. General Linda Foster's voice joined the transmission from her command ship, which phased in and out of normal space like a ghost that could choose when to be real. She described the defensive capabilities that humanity had developed during their years of preparation, not as threats but as demonstrations of how far beyond Council reach they had moved. Human vessels could appear anywhere in Council space without warning, observe any activity without detection, and disappear before any response was possible. The general explained that humanity's new civilization contained not just advanced technology, but entirely new approaches to organizing society that eliminated the competition and conflict that plagued Council space. Resources were unlimited when you could create new dimensions to house expanding populations. Territory disputes became meaningless when space itself could be engineered to provide whatever environments different groups preferred. Military conflicts were unnecessary when defensive systems could protect populations without requiring offensive capabilities against neighbors. Engineer Matt Collins appeared via hologram to demonstrate some of the simpler technologies that humanity had chosen not to share with Council species. He activated a small device that converted atmospheric gases directly into complex manufactured goods, creating tools and equipment from thin air using principles that Council scientists watched with growing horror at their own ignorance. Another device repaired damaged materials by rebuilding them at the molecular level, restoring broken objects to perfect condition in seconds. Dr. Helen Price joined the demonstration by showing how human medical technology had advanced beyond anything the Council had imagined possible. Diseases that plagued Council species for centuries could be eliminated permanently using techniques that worked at the genetic level. Aging could be stopped or reversed through treatments that restored cellular function to optimal levels. Injuries that would cripple members of other species could be healed completely within hours using regenerative systems that rebuilt damaged tissue. Navigator Pete Johnson revealed the true scope of humanity's exploration beyond Council space, describing discoveries that made their former territories seem like a small village compared to a vast continent. The dimensional spaces that humans now inhabited contained thousands of star systems, each one designed for specific purposes and populated with communities that pursued different aspects of human culture and achievement. Some dimensions were devoted to scientific research that pushed the boundaries of knowledge in every field. Others focused on artistic and cultural development that created beauty beyond anything achieved in normal space. Captain Jake Morrison transmitted images from the new human territories that showed cities and landscapes that seemed impossible even to species accustomed to advanced technology. Buildings that grew like living organisms while providing perfect living conditions for their inhabitants. Transportation systems that move people instantly across vast distances without requiring any vehicles or infrastructure. Natural environments that had been designed rather than evolved, combining the beauty of pristine wilderness with the convenience of advanced civilization. President Turner concluded his presentation by offering the Council a choice that would determine the future relationship between humanity and the species they had left behind. Individual council members who could demonstrate genuine commitment to cooperation rather than domination would be welcome to visit human space and learn from the civilization they had helped drive away. But the invitation came with requirements that most council leaders would find impossible to accept. The requirements included abandoning all claims to superiority over other species and accepting that every civilization had valuable contributions to make regardless of their apparent technological level. Council members would need to share their own knowledge freely rather than hoarding it for a competitive advantage. Most difficult of all, they would need to admit that their treatment of humanity had been wrong and commit to building relationships based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical control. Turner explained that humanity would maintain limited contact with council space through monitoring stations that would observe but not interfere with galactic civilization. If council species eventually evolved beyond their current limitations and learned to treat other civilizations as genuine equals, humanity might consider closer cooperation. But that choice belonged entirely to the council and would be judged by actions rather than promises. The transmission ended with humanity's final gift to the species they were leaving behind: complete technical specifications for clean energy systems that would eliminate resource conflicts throughout council space. Medical treatments that would end the worst diseases affecting every known species. Agricultural techniques that would end hunger on every world. The technologies were freely given without conditions or restrictions, demonstrating the cooperation that could have existed if the Council had chosen partnership over dominance from the beginning. Admiral Fulren watched the human ships fade from his sensors as they returned to dimensional space beyond his reach. The Council fleet that had begun this mission with confidence in their technological superiority now faced the humbling reality that they had lost access to the most advanced civilization in known space through their own arrogance and inability to see beyond traditional power structures. The return journey to Council space took months, giving every member of the expedition time to contemplate what they had learned about humanity and about themselves. They carried with them not just reports of impossible human achievements, but the knowledge that they had been offered the chance to be part of something greater than their petty territorial disputes, and could have had it all if only they had been wise enough to treat their human neighbors as the equals they had always been.